Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the Quinto Encuentro, the fifth Encuentro. And I say the word Encuentro in Spanish. Um, you know, I think there's about 1 million words in the English language, and it's growing every day. It's kind of a technical culture. In terms of our linguistic culture, we have a word that's very precise and used for every purpose. The Spanish language, I think, has about 150,000 or 200,000 words, much less. And so in the Spanish linguistic culture, we use words with multiple meanings. And if you want to translate from English to Spanish, it usually takes more words in the Spanish because you have to get that precision with multiple words on the Spanish side. On the other hand, it can also happen the other way, because when you say something in Spanish, it's like instead of touching or playing the piano with one finger, it's like playing the piano with all 10 fingers. And you're hearing layers of meaning and harmonies and resonances and arpeggios. And so the one word encuentro in Spanish, it can be translated just as encounter, like I meet you, we have an encounter. It also can be used in a sense of a gathering. In the religious context, it deeply means encounter with Christ, encounter with the faith community, but it also means, in a very specific way, a tradition of gathering and listening to everybody in order to deeply immerse ourselves in the reality of our people and then respond from faith in light of tradition to the reality that people are living. And so that's the way that's the primary meaning when we talk about encuentro in the Hispanic ministry setting in the United States. That's the primary meaning, but all those other layers of meaning are also present. So we choose not to translate it into fifth encounter, it's fifth encuentro. The first one happened in 1972. It was a response to the Second Vatican Council. The Vatican Council concluded Latin America moved very strongly in their pastoral response to use this encuentro model, nationally and internationally. It was actually their second gathering of the bishops of all of Latin America was held in Medellin, Colombia in 1968. The previous one was pre-Vatican II. The new one brought in a whole new model of approach. And then in 1972, leaders in Hispanic ministry in the United States said, we need to learn from that, we need to take advantage of that methodology, and we'll do it here. So that was the first encuentro. Happened in 1972. There were only about 250 people present. It happened in Washington, D.C. The next one, in 1979, gathered more people, the second encuentro, and they started to form regional structures to support Hispanic ministry. And in preparation for the third encuentro in 1985, they did a very intensive and deep grassroots effort to reach out and hear the voices of people who were engaged but had concerns. And all of that fed into their process. And then from there, the first National Pastoral Plan for Hispanic Ministry was formed by the U.S. bishops, published in 1987. The year 2000 came along, and the Hispanic Ministry Office of the USCCB invited the whole church to Jubilee. Let's celebrate the new millennium, and they called that Encuentro 2000. It was a little bit different process. It didn't have the grassroots consultation. It was a celebration of the millennium. And so here we are, starting in around 2015, the formal preparations began, and the grassroots consultation started in 2017. The national event took place. So it started in parishes and dioceses throughout the country. I think we had about 145 dioceses that took part out of 178 territorial dioceses in the United States. They did the the small group and parish processes, they did a diocesan encuentro, and then they did regional encuentros. So the colors here on the map represent the 14 episcopal regions of the United States. Each one had its own encuentro in the first 6 months or so of 2018. And then in September of 2018, we had the national encuentro in Fort Worth, Texas. Since then, we've been in a process of reflecting on what was heard. We just published recently the proceedings and conclusions of the encuentro, and now we're in the process of going back to the regions, going back to the dioceses, and sharing everything that we learned. And so that process will end, and my role with the encuentro process will end at the end of this year. A priority in the process, the consultation process, we wanted to hear from young people. We wanted to hear their hopes, their joys, their concerns, the obstacles they experience in the life of the church. And based on the data that we got, we would say that about 20% of the participants at the parish and diocesan level were youth and young adults themselves. So that's a significant number, representing about 28,000 young people that participated in the reflection and mission sessions of the fifth Encuentro. We engaged them, not only the young people, but everybody in the sessions of the Encuentro, to go out to the peripheries, as Pope Francis uses that word, and find people and engage them in conversation about their hopes and dreams, their obstacles, their challenges, and what they would like to receive and contribute to the church. Their gifts and talents, their concerns and their hopes. And so an additional 32,000 young people were encountered in the missionary visits to the peripheries. So some of the things that we'll be looking at come from that consultation. In addition, there were extra efforts for the consultation. We did some demographic analysis. I told you my background was in computer science, sociological research. I mined the data from the Census Bureau. I mined data from the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, from the Pew Research Center. I brought it all together, and we were able to come up with this perspective on the changing demographics of the U.S. Catholic Church. And you can see here, from ages 30 and under, this is the 50% line. All the green shades are the Hispanic Catholics, and then we have the yellow is the white or Caucasian Euro-American Catholics, African American and Asian, Native American and others, including multi-ethnic groups. For the Hispanics, we have it broken down by generation. So immigrants, US-born children of immigrants, and third or higher generation. So like in my case, I estimate I'm a 15th generation Hispanic here in this country. We've been around for a long time. And I'll tell you, my parents both grew up speaking Spanish. They didn't use that as their primary language at our house because they were punished in school for speaking Spanish, and they didn't want us to have to experience that. So for me, it was a language that came to me as an adult. In any case, among these younger generations, the majority of Hispanic young people today are the children of immigrants. So when we talk about gente puente, this is a rich resource. People who grew up in this country, had their education in English, but had an experience of language and faith and culture at home that was rooted in the immigrant reality. So they can be bridges. We just need to identify them, recognize the gift they bring, and then empower them to be that for the church. This is, of course, different from one region of the country to another. And so this map shows how in some dioceses, which are the ones in the dark blue, the majority of Catholics already are Hispanic. And in some cases, like El Paso, it might be 98% of the Catholic population there is Hispanic. The ones in dark red, that's dioceses where Hispanics are the largest ethnic group, but not a majority. There is no ethnic or cultural majority in those dioceses, but the Hispanics are the largest. And then in the orange, that's dioceses where Hispanics are the largest, among young people. It's the largest minority among young people. Then we have a few more. There's the yellow dioceses where at least 35% or more of the Catholic children are Hispanic. The brown are dioceses where 25% or more of the Catholic children are Hispanic, and then the light green, 15% or more. The gray would be less than 15%. If you're in one of these dioceses where there really is a large established Hispanic population, you need to engage that community and find what are the solutions that make sense for that group. I mean, it may mean having multiple different structures of leadership and activity in one diocese, or it may mean having, like Armando was saying, it's under one umbrella, but there are times when you form groups and you do breakout sessions and you work to address different experiences and different realities to have a comprehensive and complex response to a comprehensive and complex reality. So that's what we're looking at. I'll move through this very quickly. We broke this down by region, and we show the number of active, retired, and retired Hispanic priests. There's a total, Armando mentioned, and we see in the statistics, the Hispanic population in the US is a young population. It's also true among the priests. Only, I think, a little bit less than 10% of our Hispanic priests are retired. And that's a lower percentage than overall in the US. Yet, roughly 3/4 of our Hispanic priests are foreign-born. And that's still true even looking at the seminarians. So that's a problem when you look back at the population, and so many of our young people today are not foreign-born, they're US-born. And so having a foreign-born Hispanic priest may still not, he needs support and maybe study to understand how to reach this US-born generation. Just like an Anglo would, or an African American would, or a Vietnamese would. And so this is where it really hits home. We looked at the data across the world and compared the number of Catholics in each region of the world to the number of priests. Here in the United States, we're actually among the wealthiest areas in the world in terms of priests. We're priest wealthy. We have more priests per Catholic than any place in the world except for Europe. Of course, over there, it also tends to be a whole lot more that are retirement age. If you look at the white non-Hispanic Catholics in the United States, we have one priest for every 12 or 1,300 one white priest for every 12 or 1,300 white Catholics. That's even higher than Europe. We have white priests galore. We say we're suffering from a priest shortage, and it's true. We could always use more priests. But relative to the rest of the world, we have twice as many for the white Catholics. For Hispanics, with the immigrant Hispanics, it's almost the same as Latin America. We have a little bit less. It's one for every 8,000. One Latin American-born Catholic priest for every 8,000 Latin American-born Catholics in the United States. Where it's really a harsh reality is when you look at the US-born Hispanics. There's one US-born Hispanic priest for every 16,000 US-born Hispanic Catholics. This is the evidence of the disconnect that Armando has been talking about in the parishes and in the diocesan level ministries. We're not reaching them. I don't think it's true, and I believe in my heart it's not true, that God has stopped calling US-born Hispanics to the priesthood and religious life. I don't believe that. God is calling, but we are not preparing hearts as fertile ground to receive the call. And we have neglected especially the US-born Hispanic young people. So that's where we're saying new solutions, new wine for new wineskins. We need to find a more adequate response. Just a little bit of information, if you want. We have detailed statistical reports for every diocese in the country. And you can go to our website, vencuentro.org, V for 5, Encuentro, ENCUENTRO.org. And if you just go to this second menu tab, Diocesan Participation, it brings up a list, and down here on the right column, for every diocese organized by region, so this is Region 1, Boston, Bridgeport, and so on. If you just scroll down, you'll come to the different regions in the country, and there's an English and a Spanish report that will show you what percentage of your young people are Hispanic, white, African American, and so forth. It'll tell you how many Hispanic priests you have, how many Hispanic lay ecclesial ministers, how many Hispanic deacons, how many Hispanic religious, and so forth. So all of that information is available on the website. Find out what the reality is in your own backyard.